Mike Rogers was talking a little earlier about the numbers of the arrests, that we are going to be seeing a lot more arrests happening today.
Yeah, I mean, significantly, I would say, you know, within this group, maybe 25 to 30. And then, you know, you had that very large group that was up with the LAPD that John was looking at over by the federal building. I want to set the lay of the land for everyone, too, because we are seeing far more law enforcement officers today than we are protesters. And if John can go back over to the bridge near the 101, I think he said it was over at Alameda, where the remainder of the group is. I just had John, while Jeff was talking, do kind of a large orbit around downtown. We looked over at City Hall. We looked in a couple other places. This is all we were able to find. And this is a relatively small group compared to what we have seen the last few days. And, you know, ideally, if LAPD or whoever the law enforcement agency is down there can resolve this one way or another before nightfall, because that's what happened last night, is we had the protests continue into the night, and then you had the group that became very violent, setting a car on fire late in the 11 o'clock hour last night, and you know, setting other things on fire, dragging things out into the street. So if they are able to kind of wrap this up before nightfall, before you get those agitators in here, that would probably put them in a better situation than they've been the last few nights.
And Mike, again, getting the word out early. Hey, we are arresting people early on. We're not going to wait. We're not going to, you know, make calls to disperse or anything like that. If you break the law, if you don't listen to what we are asking you to do, we're going to move in and arrest you.
Yeah, and it's happened fast. And with that, especially with that CHP one, I mean, you know, the days before this, it's taken them hours to be able to facilitate those arrests. And today it was done in a matter of minutes. And it was, here's the deal, get out or don't, and you're going to go to jail if you don't. And that's what's happening right now. So those people will be taken, they'll be processed, likely, unless they have other issues with, and by other issues I mean warrants, or if they're accused of something more serious than simply failure to disperse. They'll be processed and released, likely. They probably won't spend a night in jail. But the more arrests that are made, the longer that process is going to take for everyone, because everybody goes to the same jail. They all go to LA County Jail, and they'll be processed there. Some of them could go to LAPD's Metropolitan Jail there and be processed there as well. But it is when you do kind of mass arrests like this, it's time consuming, and it takes a while to get booked and released, even if you are likely going to be released on OR or you know, on a zero bail type situation.
And this is also a more effective way, Mike, of getting your message across, right? We're not talking about tagging or looting or anything like this. It's very clear. These images are being broadcast all over the world, all over the country. People agreeing to be arrested for a cause that they feel very passionate about. Not only are they upset about the ICE raids, but also about the federal law enforcement coming in to California to help with the crowd control and whatnot, and protecting the federal buildings.
Right, in which today, and John, actually, can you go back over to the Metropolitan Detention Center, because, you know, that's been a big kind of sticking point between the Trump administration and what's actually happening here on the ground, is that federal law enforcement, the National Guard, has not actually been in the streets doing any kind of crowd control, any kind of you know, protest enforcement. They have been only blocking, and here they are, even just a couple of them, but they've only been at the federal building. Last night in Santa Ana, we talked about, was kind of the first time that we'd seen them a little bit mobile, even though they weren't engaging with the crowd at all. They were still just in the area of the federal building, but this has been their role. They've just been protecting the federal building. John telling me those are federal agents, not even the National Guard at this point. We did see, I think there's a Humvee or two parked up to, you know, closer to the building there, but there's just not been this, you know, surge of federal law enforcement or military members into the streets of LA or anywhere else here in Southern California. It has been our local law enforcement that has been dealing with this.
I was going to say, we saw more of it last night in Santa Ana, Mike, as you were saying. They were basically lining one of the main streets there in Santa Ana, block by block, just kind of north, south, east, and west, kind of watching for protesters and keeping people away from that area. So a very different scene today, but definitely one that we see plenty of law enforcement out there on the streets, very visible, and even giving the media a bit of a, I don't want to say a hard time, but giving them just instructions that they have to follow.
Exactly, making sure that they are credentialed journalists that are out there covering the story, and not just people who have a cell phone or who want to be out there covering it for their YouTube page or their, you know, their fans. So we've been watching this, and after that first initial group that made their way onto the 101 broke up, we did in fact send CHP kind of looking for where that crowd ended up, and we never found a large group of people.
Yeah, I mean, they moved back just to the left. If John, if you can go back to the left of that, the federal building right there, where they had ended up, but then they moved away from that area. So they had kind of gathered here, and then I don't know where they went from there, but they are gone. And John just did a big orbit around downtown for us, and we didn't really find anybody. I mean, there's a couple stragglers there you see on the corner. There's a couple more people back over at Alameda. I can't tell what's going on right there. Is that a box? Yeah.
So, Mike, the large crowd that we saw yesterday outside the federal building, they're just not here today?
Yeah, and because the federal building is right where, I can't tell what they're handing out down there, but they got a box and they're handing a bunch of stuff out. I don't know if it's food or see maybe a water bottle in there, maybe just some snacks for the people that are protesting.
Like something, yeah.
But wasn't the group that was at the federal building today, wasn't that the group that then marched onto the 101? Isn't that where they came from?
Yeah, they did, and that's why I was trying to figure out where they went to, because that was a decent sized group, and it was interesting to me that they just, I guess, dispersed. But I don't know if they ended up back over at Alameda, John, if that's where they kind of worked their way around to and ended up over there. John, can you show us where the building was yesterday, where we saw that large group up against the steps of the federal building? I think it's not far from here, right? He's going to look for us really quick. Yeah, okay, so it's the other side of that building, and I don't think anybody's over there because you see all the traffic.
And that's Los Angeles Street right there, right, Mike?
Yeah, and
that's
you see
Los Angeles and Aliso. Yeah.
Right, and you see all the traffic moving just fine. You see just kind of run-of-the-mill, pedestrians going about their business over there. So, I mean, it looks like the remainder of them are back over on Alameda on the backside of the detention center near the 101 freeway.
Yeah, at this time yesterday, Mike, those protesters were blocking the lanes of traffic just in front of that building there. So, looks like it's a very different situation today. You see traffic moving, and as soon as the KCAL kind of whisks around, are there any law enforcement members up there on the? They are.
And not National Guard like we saw yesterday. Maybe one or two in those camouflage outfits, but these are back to federal law enforcement agents. These are not National Guard members that are there. These are federal law enforcement. So. But a smaller number of them as well as they gather there, and you see another person right there with a less than lethal, pepper ball or munitions there in case those protesters do come back. But such a different scene yesterday. Everyone's kind of going about their business today.
And Mike, we've been concentrating so much on downtown LA. Have you heard anything in Santa Ana? Anything going on
Michelle's down there. Michelle Geely is down there.
Yes.
It was getting a little heated for a second last we checked in.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has kind of calmed down a bit down there. I'm sure we'll check in with her in a bit. I don't see any aircraft. Like last night they had helicopters just kind of never-ending circling that area as they were trying to make sure that they had eyes from above. I don't see that up there right now. There has been a Black Hawk from Department of Homeland Security that has been kind of looking around. They made a loop around Santa Ana. They're clearing out to the north now. They came out and checked downtown out. They're not hanging out there either. So, it seems things are much more peaceful today. This is the largest group that we know of in downtown LA. We've not heard protests kind of break out anywhere else. And I think part of the other thing too is that we haven't seen large-scale, immigration enforcement actions like we did Friday and Saturday. That was what really sparked all of this off. Now we have heard of a couple. We know that there was one in Ventura County today, in the Oxnard area. There was also one in the Paramount area, but they were quicker. They were a little bit more low-key than the ones we saw on Friday and Saturday, and didn't really give people a lot of time to get down there and protest. So while they are still happening, the FBI tweeted as much today, saying that they are still continuing the operations. They were a part of the one in Ventura County. We are not seeing them on the scales or the visibility, I would say, that we saw on Friday and Saturday, which is what really prompted kind of all of this reaction and response to everything. So here we are, 4:58 p.m., ending KCAL News at 4 o'clock. The 101 is back open after a surge of protesters made it onto the 101 freeway. CHP arresting the ones that didn't want to leave. The rest of the group has significantly diminished, and they are kind of back over near Alameda right now. This is what's remaining. You see everybody you see down here, this is all law enforcement. This is all California Highway Patrol finishing up processing the last remaining people. There you see them right there, all standing with the people that have chosen to be arrested. It was very peaceful. Nobody was violent. Nobody on law enforcement side. Nobody on the protester side. Everybody was compliant with what was being asked of them by the CHP officers. And now, as we get ready to join KCAL News at 5 on CBS Los Angeles, they're being boarded onto that Los Angeles County Sheriff's bus to be processed. We'll be joining here at the 5 o'clock hour in just a few seconds rather.
Thank you very much, Mike Rogers. We are following several breaking stories at 5 o'clock. including the 5th day of immigration protests in downtown LA.
KCAL is live over the area right now, where officers are trying to keep protesters from getting back onto the 101 freeway. A group did block the freeway about an hour ago, but officers were able to move them off. We have live team coverage in just seconds.
Okay, we also have other breaking news tonight, and this is in Burbank. You're looking at a brush fire burning in the hills just north of Bethany Road and Amherst Drive. This is near the Starlight Bowl and DeBell Golf Course. Burbank fire officials say there is an evacuation notice on Walnut Avenue above Bel Air Drive and above Bel Air Ball Field. The evacuation site is at the McCambridge Recreation Center. You can see flames, active flames there. All hiking trails in the area are also closed, including Wildwood Canyon and the Stowe Nature Center.
And there's also a brush fire near Apple Valley. The ranch fire started around 1:30 this afternoon and has grown to more than 1,500 acres. Multiple buildings are threatened, and firefighters say it is spreading quickly because of the wind. The San Bernardino County Sheriff says there are evacuation orders from Milpas Drive to High Road south of Highway 18. The evacuation site is Sitting Bull Academy.
Okay, well, now let's get back to those protests happening in downtown Los Angeles. On day 5, our Jeff Nguyen is there where the 101 is backed up from protester and police presence. Jeff.
Pat and Rudabeh, as you can see right behind me, there are just dozens of CHP officers right now. What is happening is that during the last hour, there was a string of people who broke through the fence line right here. They got onto this dirt field, and then beyond that, they got onto the 101 freeway. This was right before the top of the 4 o'clock hour, and so we saw about 30, 40 CHP officers basically surrounded them in 360 degrees, kind of enveloped them, and then they kind of closed in their circle. We should tell you that no force was really used. There were no non-lethal munitions. There were no swinging of the batons. They simply just kind of closed in the circle. We did see one person fall down, and that person was quickly arrested. But as for the rest of the group, they were basically pushed back onto this dirt field off of the freeway. They were actually given a chance to leave. They chose not to do that, and then there was an order to disperse. Those people chose to not leave, even though they were given a chance. And so what the CHP did was the process that is known as kettling, where they basically came from this direction over here. Ollie, if you want to show the armored vehicle from CHP SWAT, there were dozens of CHP officers coming down this way. They were met with officers on this side over here. Sorry, Ollie. On this side over here because they were already on the freeway, and then they were met with officers on that side. So right now, dozens of people have been arrested. They took out the zip ties, they locked up their hands, took down their information, they've been processed, and then they'll be loaded up onto a series of black and white buses down there where you can see Commercial Street meets Garvey Street, and then they will be taken off. And then for more processing, you know, one of the things that the officers also need to do, in addition to maintaining people's civil rights, is to make sure that if anybody has any sort of medical condition, those are tended to as well. But you know, we really got to really see what it takes to just arrest a group of maybe 3 or 4 dozen people. You know, it's not like in the movies where you can have a 1-to-1 ratio. Yesterday, LAPD Chief McDonald kind of explained to us that in order to just arrest one person, you need at least 2 or 3 officers, because sometimes people are very combative. They don't just give up, and certainly some suspects are bigger than others. Some police officers are bigger than others, so you can't just have 1-to-1 and expect people to be rounded up. You know, even during the course of this coverage, we'll see sometimes it takes 2 to 3 police officers just to get someone inside a police car to control them. But you know, for about 35 minutes or so, the CHP basically closed down the freeway to make sure that it was as secure. And as Oliver basically pans to his left, you can see now both sides of the 101 is flowing both northbound and southbound. And for folks who may be somewhat familiar with this part of downtown LA, you know, the old Denny's is right by Piper Tech, which is where LAPD launches their helicopters, is nearby. The Metro headquarters for the subway and bus system is also near here. This is where the 101 meets the 10 freeway. Then if you go a little bit farther down, you'll meet Boyle Heights, and you've got like the 3rd Street Bridge. So that's where we are right now. But now things are certainly moving a lot smoother than we saw yesterday. Earlier in the day outside the Metropolitan Detention Center, the LAPD also called out an order of dispersal as well. So we are seeing them, for a lack of a better word, being much more proactive than we have seen in recent days. You know, if we harken back to 2020, Pat, you and I did a lot of that coverage together, and you may remember a lot of times the police department, in the observance of people's First Amendment rights, they would allow them to kind of stand around, march around, and kind of get into sort of a one-sided yelling match with police officers, and then the crowd would swell and swell and swell, and then nightfall would come and things would break out. I think in recent days, you know, they have kind of learned from that pattern in terms of quelling things and making sure that things don't expand or multiply or enumerate. And so what we have been seeing today is something like this was dealt with very quickly in terms of getting people off that freeway. In all honesty, it was probably 5 minutes max in terms of from the time that people got onto the freeway to the time that they got off the freeway. You know, once the police officers got onto the scene and surrounded them, it was probably a JV high school wrestling match. It was probably like 2 minutes of a round, and it was done. Everybody was gone. So now the language here is certainly more relaxed, but right now what we have is just this sort of sheer volume of CHP officers maintaining this frontage road right by the 101. Pat and Rudabeh, we'll send it right back to you.
You know what, Jeff, obviously some strategic planning, probably overnight or early this morning on the part of law enforcement, that's for sure. You know, when you reference 2020, I remember those shouting matches and people exercising their First Amendment rights, law enforcement going along with them, and then the other destruction came from people that really probably had nothing to do with the protests and wanted to destroy property, as we have seen in nightfall when that happens. I'm just curious, Jeff, did they block the exits earlier or were they open? Because I'm just wondering how they got on the 101 freeway in the first place.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. They certainly did block off the on-ramps and off-ramps. So what happened was there was a break in the fence. So it's right here. Oliver's going to walk right up to it for you. Someone decided to cut this fence line right open, kind of rolled it up, and, you know, dozens and dozens of kids, well, I say kids because, you know, they're much younger than I, but teenagers and maybe people in their early 20s just kind of busted through, and they got onto the freeway. They acted like if it was like a block party, and they slowed down traffic, and the officers, many of them were stationed nearby. They basically, you know, came right down the freeway, got on both sides, and it was a matter of about 30 or 40 of them. And if I may, so hang on, Ollie. So I'm going to try to do this as best as I can. But if, you know, this is the cluster of people that you see in my palm. The outside circumference of it was the CHP officers, and they kind of closed in and moved towards the direction of the fence line. And that was it. It was basically like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, done. They were out of here.
Thank you. That's an excellent description as to what happened, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Great demonstration there. And were the National Guard troops protecting ICE agents as they made arrests in LA?
You know, to be honest with you, Rudabeh, you know, Oliver and our assignment today was dealing with the vandalism that took place in a number at a number of nonprofits in the Little Tokyo area, the Japanese American National Museum, as well as the Little Tokyo Service Center that has affordable housing for older adults. So we were in the area to talk about those landmarks and the impact of those landmarks because of the vandalism. You know, for people who may be familiar with the Japanese American National Museum, it was founded in that spot for a very specific reason. During World War II, that is where Japanese Americans were picked up on buses to take to the internment camps, and that's why it exists there. Right. So there are, you know, Pat, you kind of touched on it earlier, you know, there is a huge distinction between people who are demonstrating in earnest and people who are agitating. And so people who were actually demonstrating in recent days came back to volunteer to clean up that museum. But right now I'm hearing in my ear to hand it back to you. So please allow me to do that, and we could probably revisit that later.
Okay,
Guys.
we will do that, Jeff. Thank you so much. We want to bring Mike into the conversation once again. Mike, we're looking at, we were looking at a picture of so many protesters walking through the streets of Los Angeles. There they go, of downtown Los Angeles. Do we have any approximate number of people today, people yesterday? I mean, since this has lasted over 5 days.
Right. Anecdotally, I would say the crowd today is smaller than yesterday. I would say each day the crowd starts to get smaller. I think part of the reason for that is because when they declare the unlawful assembly, they are quick with making the arrests. The last couple of days, they've not had the luxury of the number of people to be able to effectuate those arrests. Today, as to Jeff's point, they said it, and within like 10 minutes, it was happening. So it's quick when they decide to make the arrest. This group right here, the LAPD airship estimated about 200 people. They were walking eastbound on 4th Street. I think they just passed Spring, is what I heard John say. I can't tell what street. Main, John, is that what he said? Yeah, Main Street. So they're moving through there. The group is mobile, though. This is, I was wondering where we had a group. So there was the group that got onto the freeway with Jeff, there was a larger portion of that group that left. And the ones that got arrested were the ones that stuck around. So we were wondering what happened to that group, and we finally found them. They're here eastbound 4th Street through Main. They started this area kind of through the Civic Center area, and then we got really into like the core of downtown, which is why we lost them for a second in the tall buildings. But they're continuing to move eastbound on 4th Street. Peaceful at this point, but demonstrating and moving. There is an LAPD helicopter above that has eyes on them. I haven't seen anybody on the ground, trying to stop them or to do anything else like that. But, we're not seeing vandalism. We're not seeing things being thrown. We're just seeing kind of marching in the street with flags and signs.
I don't see many motorists. I guess, do they still have some streets blocked off, or have they been back open today? Since I'm assuming, business is still open in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah, from what I've seen and here, here's a good example. So watch, the protesters will stop the traffic. And that person doesn't really want to stop, but you see the protesters will come in here, they'll try to hold traffic. That person also doesn't want to stop. And then they'll just decide where they're going to march. And now it looks like they're going to make, a northbound turn, John? On this street right here, and they're going to continue to go onto Los Feliz Street, I think you said, John? Yeah. And so they're moving up here. LAPD airship's got eyes on them, and they're just kind of, doing their thing and walking through. But to your answer, Pat, there's the cars that are still in downtown. Oh, Los Angeles Street, John said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, a lot more cars there coming to a standstill now as they wait for this crowd to walk by them.
I noticed someone in the front there, holding up something over his head, and I don't know if it was some kind of not a weapon. I'm not saying that at all, but this guy looked to be a guy that was out really in front of the crowd, maybe leading the crowd. Have you noticed that, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of saw that. There seemed to be some sort of kind of organization.
John
will move a little bit forward. You've got that person in the kind of the white hat there. Oh, these guys are taking pictures as well. The group kind of has like this, I don't want to call it a leader, but somebody that's clearly like, hey, let's do this. And that's kind of the way they go. And that's how they've been just kind of making their turns, is somebody out in front will say, let's turn here. And then the group just kind of, goes with it and follows. And you saw a couple of those people trying to stop traffic as it pushed through. So again, about 200 to 300 people, according. Now they're saying, okay, police a portion of police headquarters is getting tagged. That's not by this group because that's not near here, but LAPD is still dealing with that. Apparently 2 people are over there tagging police headquarters right now.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they broke out the windows. Here's police headquarters, John. It was the PHF building, they said. And it was 2 people in black that were doing it. So we'll see if they see that. But they were putting out that call right now.
And it looked like that street to the right of our screen here was blocked off by officers. That's what it looked like to me. Let's see if we get a wider shot of that.
Yeah, they still have, oh yeah, you have a little bit of a skirmish line right here on the street. There is still a lot of law enforcement. It is the primary area where they're kind of holding off all their police cars and everything is back over by the federal building, the Metropolitan Detention Center. But yeah, they do still have some cars blocked off, and you've got a line of officers standing in front of police headquarters. Because on the right side of police headquarters, right there is where they were smashing out the windows with the scooters on, what was that, Sunday night, I believe. So
I wonder if they called up even more law enforcement today. I know they wanted an additional 400, or they had an additional 400 by the time nightfall happened last evening.
Yeah.
But would you say, Mike and Rudabeh, that they are in different positions this time? They're in different places this time?
I would say
like
that,
in anticipation of where,
Right.
people could
yeah,
possibly protest.
I would say that they've gotten themselves in a position where they're able to mobilize very quickly. And what I've noticed today is less LAPD, to be honest, and a lot of CHP today. I mean, I've seen a lot of California Highway Patrol officers today.
Why do you think that is?
Because they're the statewide agency, so they're probably where you can draw the most resources from. I would say when they ask for mutual aid from other cities and other counties, they'll get them, but not in high quantity numbers, because those agencies still need to patrol their own communities. The statewide agency you can pull from all over the place.
Bakersfield, if you want.
Northern California. I mean, you can get them from anywhere. So we've seen a ton of CHP today.
And when we do see the LAPD working these lines, we were talking about how much they exercised restraint last night, at least from the footage we could see. At one point, there was an officer who was hit by a woman's bag, when the line got really close to the officers there, and they exercised so much restraint. And they are trained so well to know these streets, to know this community, to handle crowds like this, to handle protests. And this is one of the points that the governor and the mayor keep talking about when you send in people who are not familiar with this community or this area geographically, or these types of protests. That's what can kind of maybe instigate something, and that's the concern there. Like, for example, the Marines don't have the power to arrest anyone, but they do have training in crowd control. So, the questions going back and forth between Washington, D.C. and local authorities as to what the federal presence will do here.
Right, and so far they haven't. I mean, even today, I had John look at some of the federal buildings where they've been posted up, and today we saw more federal agents than we have National Guard. I mean, I think we only saw at the federal building maybe 2 National Guardsmen. The rest was all federal agents. So now the National Guard's not even really at the federal buildings where they had been the last couple of days. I really quickly want to give an update to where Jeff was. California Highway Patrol telling us they've detained 67 people at that location, which is a lot. I mean, you look at the numbers on the first couple of days. I mean, even though the more chaotic days were Saturday and Sunday, Saturday, I think it was like 27 arrests. Sunday, it was like 24. I mean,
yesterday was 40.
Yeah, and so the numbers are starting to grow because law enforcement has so many more resources and so much more ability to essentially mean it when they say it, that we're going to arrest you. Saturday and Sunday, I mean, they issued unlawful assembly orders starting at like 3 o'clock. But we're not able to make arrests for a good several hours because they were just so overwhelmed. Didn't have enough people, overwhelmed by the crowd. Now there are so many law enforcement officers here that when they say it, they're going to do it, and they did it. And now CHP telling us they've detained 67 people.
Okay, guys, here's the other question. When I listened to the president today, people all over the country are obviously seeing pictures, a lot of our pictures, by the way, showing people being destructive. In particular, that guy that we focused on from our chopper last night, taking that sledgehammer out and chopping up the sidewalk, the curb, to get rocks. When you think, well, I don't know who could have necessarily stopped that at that moment, even if, they were spread out. Our law enforcement was spread out, but that's big confrontation, How would they do that? You'd have to be there to see it, and if you were there, that probably wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Just like the cars, once you set them on fire, you have to let them burn or put them out. And we couldn't get the fire department in there. So I'm just trying to strategically ask the question, and what difference would it make even if you had National Guard or Marines out on the streets like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be an element of the group is here and the police are here, right? They're never going to be intermingled like that. And I think when you're dealing with this, I don't even want to call it civil unrest at that point. That was just, people being destructive, vandalism, and people being destructive. There's just an element of that. Unfortunately, that's going to happen. And no matter how many cops you have there, if that person's mixed in the crowd, they're not going to advance that far down the street. Remember how far away those cops were last night? They would to get that
there
one
were a lot
person.
Of them, but
right,
they were in a
to get that
area.
one person, they would have essentially had to bolt down the street, and then it becomes, is that safe? What are we doing with the rest of the crowd? Are we covered behind us? So it doesn't operationally and tactically, it doesn't always make sense to just go in and get that one person with the hammer.
And we will see what difference tonight will make as well in terms of deployment, because they did go back to the same area. They hit that T-Mobile store, right, and Adidas. I imagine tonight, well, it's boarded up anyway, but I imagine they will be more spread out to protect some of the businesses.
Right.
Okay, we want to check back in with Jeff Nguyen. He has been out there as these arrests were made on the freeway. Jeff, what's it looking like now?
So Rudabeh and Pat, we walked about a quarter mile from where we were on that frontage road on Commercial, and now we are at the corner of Commercial and Alameda, and Oliver's going to show you this crowd right behind us. There is a number of demonstrators right here at the corner. So on one side, you've got Commercial, on the other side, you've got Aliso, and many folks have been very familiar with this sort of area in recent days, because this is where the federal detention center is. Earlier we saw a number of people getting into, again, that sort of one-sided yelling match with LAPD. Earlier, LAPD did give out the order to disperse here. So right here we have a combination of both CHP and LAPD on this side of the intersection, and then on the other side you have some CHP officers kind of preventing more people or preventing the odds of people getting back onto the freeway. So these demonstrators out here are clearly outnumbered. We are seeing some of them leaving in the last few seconds or so before you came to us. But I think Rudabeh, you might have been asking me earlier about some of the white buses that were out here. I'm going to ask Oliver to kind of be careful, because we're going to pan and try to avoid showing you some of the profanity that's on the wall. So he's going to keep the angle a little bit low, and then he's going to go down there. But behind all of these CHP units is where the entrance to the VA as well as the detention center is. Ollie, you're going to want to have to stop right here if you don't mind. And then earlier, Ollie, come over this way a little bit. Here, I'll help you, bud. Just slide to your right, slide to your right, slide to your right, slide to your right. And then Ollie's going to show you that white bus that was brought in. There has been a series of buses like that since about 1:30, 2 o'clock or so. So they have been really prepared. And then before they utilize that bus, Ollie was going to rotate this way a little bit. Stop right there, and they've got that white truck with the loudspeaker, and they'll use that to inform people of the order for dispersal. But as Ollie walk in this direction, you can see all of the LAPD officers out here in their riot gear. And then you've got CHP moving the crowd along Alameda away from the freeway. So you've got this sort of a joint effort where LAPD kind of secures this street, and then CHP dealing with the folks closer to the freeway. Part of that too is in terms of just a force multiplier. In addition to being a force multiplier, CHP also come this way, Ollie. It looks like they're arresting somebody on the curb right there. So you'll see this movement of police officer, Ollie, right at the corner where you see the Toyota Camry, I believe, the dark Camry. You see right by the front right side wheel well, there is someone being detained underneath on the pavement over there. People were being told to disperse. I don't know what led to him being arrested, but at some point they'll probably prop him up, get him up off the ground after they've secured him. But certainly, sorry, because the officers are kind of blocking our view, but certainly someone being detained right now. But when we first started this live shot about a minute and a half ago, certainly this overpass was covered with a lot more people, and at this point, a lot less. One of the senior officers out here, as well as the sergeant, grabbed some sort of a plastic bag. We're not sure what's filled inside that plastic bag, but chances are the senior lead officer decided, that's a hazard he doesn't want there, and the sergeant also made sure that that bag is away from anybody. But that's the latest right here, overlooking the Alameda overpass, overlooking the 101. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Jeff, that's to me reminiscent of, I guess most recent, the Palestinian protests that took place on our campuses here, where you knew something was about to happen when they brought in the buses and the zip ties. You knew they were going to make arrests, and apparently they are very prepared today in having those buses in place, knowing that that was going to happen, or in anticipation of that happening,
yeah,
that they would make arrests. Looking at this picture from CHP, Jeff, we see they have formed a line, law enforcement, behind these protesters that were marching on, Mike might know the exact name of the street where they are.
Right now, over the freeway. This is, I believe this is going to be...
This the overpass?
Yeah, right there, the overpass. I see Commercial Street there. Hang on, sorry, I'm just looking at a map. I think that might be Maine.
And it looks like they might be making an arrest or hunched over someone on kind of the center top of the screen. They just went off screen, but you can see some officers hunched over there on the overpass.
Yeah, the overpass is
so
not...
we are...
go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Let's just go. No, okay. Sorry. My bad. So sorry. Jump the guns. Which way?
All right, Jeff's coordinating with law enforcement
bad.
on which way they're supposed to be going there so that we don't get into any kind of situations. Earlier, he was there with CHP. This is the much larger group here that is just moving one to the south of where that other group was. And that intersection, I believe that's going to be, let's see, is that Maine? Yeah, that might be Maine or Los Angeles where they're at right now moving. So it is still that pretty, decent sized group that is moving through there, which is, how kind of things, started yesterday when they all kind of started merging together here along the 101 freeway. But yesterday, the officers had the 101 blocked. They didn't let them get into the Chinatown area, and now we're right back in front of the Federal Building, which is where we were yesterday as well.
Don't see as much activity at the Federal Building. Certainly see law enforcement there, and a smaller, well, it looks, maybe it's growing a bit, but obviously we don't see anybody throwing rocks at this time, thank goodness.
And real quick, Pat, just on the left side of your screen, I want you to see that somebody is getting arrested there, and looks like not very willingly.
Yeah, a lot of resistance.
Yeah. I can't tell. That looks like that's CHP officers, I believe, and it looks like they're going to shackle the feet too, and have to pick them up and carry them out of there. This would be the first type of arrest like this that we've seen. Everybody else that's been arrested has been pretty cooperative with the officers. It was kind of the civil disobedience type situation where they knew that they were going to be arrested, and that was a decision that they made to prove their point or protest their frustrations with what is going on.
Okay, well, Mike, we do have on the phone with us now Sergeant Daniel Keene from CHP. Sergeant Keene, are you with us?
Hi, Pat.
Hi, sir. Well, it looks like you have a lot going on there. You've made quite a few arrests. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, we have. We have additional resources deployed, as you could tell, and we quickly responded to the area. As you're probably watching, we have our special response team taking another in custody. They're specially trained officers, so the carry that they're doing to get this individual out, like you've been saying, they've been cooperative mostly, but when we get them into custody, uncooperative by going on the freeway, and that's where we're at. We are taking action.
And when you say this is a special response team and they're trained for this kind of thing, what sets them apart? How are they trained differently to prepare for this type of civil unrest or, in some cases, vandalism or violence?
These officers receive extra training in civil disturbance. They train quarterly. In addition to that, they do additional trainings at their areas, respond out to help other agencies with training, and then annually they recertify in techniques.
Would you say, Sergeant Keene, that for the most part things have gone relatively smoother today? I know it sounds like you said you have more officers out there today. Would you say that this is going a bit better than it has been over the last few days?
We do have more resources in the area, so that does help us. And we do have plans in place, so it does make it go a lot smoother. And we are monitoring the crowd. We're going to continue to monitor the crowd and take the appropriate action necessary when we need to.
Do you feel like you have the resources necessary to handle this situation at the local and state level?
Yeah, at the state level, we do have resources from the California Highway Patrol from throughout the state that are down here assisting with it. We have a contingency of officers, and as you could tell, when the freeway was taken over, we responded swiftly, professionally, took action, and got the roadway clear and effected arrests. Protesting on the freeway is not going to be tolerated.
And Sergeant Keene, looks like you haven't met with a lot of resistance. We are focused, though, however, on this one individual to the left of our screen that seems to be giving, having trouble even standing up and being taken into custody. You mentioned you have resources throughout the state. That also includes Northern California. Have you called upon some of your officers from that far to come down here and assist?
We have called upon specialized units. Our mounted patrol is actually out there on horseback, so they will be there. So other units are coming. But in addition, we have resources still throughout the state that are available if we need a call on, or if another situation arises, they can respond to.
And we've seen CHP officers kind of spread around the downtown area over the past days. How are you delegating? I know there are up to 14 agencies working together and assisting with assisting the LAPD. How do you delegate who goes where? For example, where your CHP officers are, because it doesn't look very organized.
We definitely have a command structure in place. It's our typical incident command system that we implement in large-scale events like this. So that is how we're able to do it. We track every officer, where they're at, where they need to be, what time they've been there, and get them relief when they need it.
I want to hear more about the mounted unit, Sergeant Keene. The other day, unfortunately, we saw horses under duress when people were throwing, smoke bombs and fireworks, and that really spooked some of the horses. And anytime we're talking about animals, then I'm sure a lot of people do. They get much more concerned, actually. So tell us about the mounted unit that you have, sir.
So our mounted unit officers, they do get specialized training. Those are their horses that they take care of, train on every day. They're assigned to the Capitol, so they are with them, riding them, and they do civil disturbance training. They expose them to large explosions, things like that, to make sure that they can handle the horse and manage a crowd, too, additionally, because when we deploy horses, it has to be a safety element for all. And with the officers coming down here to assist, they will be working with LAPD. This is part of the mutual aid of how it went. And so they will be deployed with them, and you will see them.
Well, that's extra special. All right, Sergeant Keene, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we wish you all the best out there.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay.
All right, we want to go now to Tom Waite, who is on the ground for us. And Tom, you were out there last night too. It looks like you're moving along with this crowd we've been seeing walking through downtown LA.
Yeah, we are just walking up past the LAPD, I believe, headquarters right now, right to City Hall. We're right past City Hall right now. This is the crowd that was near the freeway just a few minutes ago. It's a very peaceful protest so far, except for the guy that is spray painting something on the wall right now. You can see literally just playing out live there. And so, yeah, we're just walking up. Obviously, there's going to be people like that who do stuff like that, but everybody else pretty much right now. I mean, this guy doesn't even have a mask on. He's just spraying the wall. Unbelievable.
Well, we have his picture.
You know, just there you go. So yeah, we are just walking up right now, and right on Temple and Spring, and again, very peaceful protest. People kind of just chanting, marching, and I think after all those arrests, possibly maybe that sort of rattled some folks, and so you have everybody just kind of moving up the street here. Here we go up Temple. Through this intersection here. The Hall of Justice is right to our right. That's where the Sheriff's Department, LA County Sheriff's Department, is based. And then we have another federal courthouse, I believe. Actually, this is I think it's California Superior Courthouse to my left. And yeah, we're just proceeding forward. And besides, you know, a little handful of people that are vandalizing buildings, everybody else seems very peaceful, very much in the moment of kind of, you know, making their voices heard and doing what, you know, we're supposed to be able to do as Americans, right? Expressing that First Amendment right. And let's just hope it stays this way, because right now I think people are feeling calm. There doesn't seem to be that volatility that we felt in other situations. We haven't seen at this particular moment any kind of confrontations between police. They appear to be allowing this to go forward. We're just moving forward right now. And there's been no resistance by the police to folks being able to march and protest. A number of different flags here. I see a bunch of American flags, some Mexican flags, people in a pickup truck. But everyone, you know, there seems to be some solidarity and unity here in the crowd in a way that seems more, much more. Less tense, let's say, much less tense, and more camaraderie here in the crowd. Again, this group was, I watched them march up from the freeway. They were kind of surrounding the 101 over there by the Federal Detention Center, and then they just proceeded up here. Now we are passing some county buildings here. Traffic here, obviously, a lot of these folks probably were not expecting this during rush hour, and now we're kind of locked in as we take one of these lanes, and we proceed here. Coming up Temple, we're still on Temple. Go ahead.
Do you get the sense that are they trying to end up somewhere? You know, I think I asked the same question yesterday about, you know, from protests past, we've seen people meet at a certain place and they listen and they get encouraged. There's somebody with a megaphone generally, and they end up somewhere, if you see what I'm trying to say here. So I'm just wondering,
right.
Is that the case?
Yeah.
Or people, they just, you know, they're walking, and if they make a turn, then so be it. But it's not necessarily that they're going to end up in a particular place where they can all rally together.
You know, I'll say this, Pat. I don't know where they're headed, but I will say it seems more organized than it did before in other times that I've covered this. And it seems more the focus is on marching and protesting. The other times that I've been, you know, I work at night, so I see a different side of this than you would see during the day. You know, at night, things turn very different, right? You have different people showing up, agitators, things like that. This feels like a march and a protest, very peaceful, non-confrontational. I don't know that there's really a lot of organization to it, but everybody's sort of just following this column of people right there through the street, and we're passing the county supervisor's building. That's where they meet there. Mm-hmm. And you see the folks there. Yeah, just very, it kind of reminds me, we keep talking about the George Floyd protests, but this reminds me a little bit of that in the sense that it's just very much a crowd of people kind of sharing the same beliefs and kind of, chanting, cheering, or just walking and talking to each other. It's not the same vibe that we had in the past few nights where you have people who came from out of Los Angeles, came up here and started creating trouble for law enforcement. I mean, I witnessed that myself, and I talked to people who said they came up from places like Orange County. So, which of course is totally fine if you come here to peacefully protest. But a lot of these people were attacking officers, throwing things, inciting, kind of creating maybe. Really ratcheting up the tension. So here we are. We're stopping right at Gloria Molina Plaza here. This is where they have like the 4th of July celebrations and a number of other events. And so everyone's kind of gathering here. We'll see. I mean, maybe someone will speak. Maybe there is some sort of organization. All this sort of just came together as we were walking from the freeway area, from the 101. And so, yeah, it's kind of, your guess is as good as mine where this ends up.
It does look like, just from above, from my estimation, my own estimation, it looks like the crowd has grown a little bit. You noticing that?
Yeah, it feels like a very large crowd. Yeah, it feels like a large crowd of people. It definitely, like, when we drove in today, in the afternoon, there were not many people in any of the areas where the protests had happened before. It was very much concentrated by the freeway, and now you have everybody, on the move, obviously. So a very different scene as we pulled in. All the streets were open that had been closed. There was, traffic was flowing, a very different vibe. And, right now, different vibe in the sense people are waving, smiling. It's definitely a feeling of a march and a protest. And I don't know if LAPD, you might have a better perspective on this than us. I don't know that LAPD is shutting down these streets and kind of guiding this. I can't really tell. Or if it's just sort of happening organically. Obviously you can hear a lot of the other drivers coming by, honking with support. And just kind of giving I guess people here, a thumbs up. This is what they're supporting this, and there's very much a sense of camaraderie, like I said before. So that kind of gives you a good sense, I think. Now how far does this go? I don't know. We're what street are we on? I lost track of which road. I'm gonna look at my Google Maps here. We are on North Hill Street. Now proceeding, looks like maybe toward, it's in the distance, but like LA Live would be if we just kept going and going. Which one? Or LAPD, but I was saying LA Live is, down, but that's quite a distance from where, but that's sort of the trajectory right now. We'll see where that ends up. I would imagine LAPD probably now is maybe, trying to find ways to direct the crowd and focus it so it stays, because I think that this is an easier way to manage, obviously, like an unplanned march. This was not something, I don't think, that was permitted. I'm going to go out on a limb here. And so now it's probably up to like LAPD to manage the traffic and keep people in a space that disrupts potentially as little as possible. But just, again, I want to stress just how peaceful and calm the crowd is, and just kind of marching through, and I think just trying to make a statement here. Obviously, it's been a really tough few days in Los Angeles, so go ahead. Sorry, Pat.
No, I was going to say, we've noticed that. We've listened to you, and we haven't heard any yelling, screaming, or anyone really moving fast. They seem like they're walking with the purpose in mind, as you talked about some protests of the past, where that's what they're doing, to bring attention to why they are marching. But we don't see the, I would say, the emotion that we've seen over the last few days, the ramped up emotion.
And you see some people on the outskirts of this line here where there's the opposing lane of traffic, and they're trying to keep the crowd in. They're trying to kind of organize among themselves and not let it spill out onto the other opposing lanes of traffic. So it looks like they are taking into consideration, for the most part, other people, with the exception of the person who was vandalizing that building that Tom saw.
You know what, guys? It would be interesting if they put some undercover police out there, so that way they could certainly, if they come across people tagging or what have you, that would catch them by surprise.
I'm sure they're there, even if just in a observing capacity, to be able to come back and deal with some of these people later.
Maybe they take a picture with the iPhone and they don't even know they're getting a picture taken. It just would make sense.
Yeah.
All right, Tom. We're having a discussion here.
They've got our live pictures, right? So they've got our live pictures of a few of those guys doing that. So one of them pretty brazen there, right? Not even wearing a mask and tagging that building. You have to hope that these people are held accountable. They're trashing our city, and that's not okay. Obviously, it's totally fine to do this. This is what we should be doing, right? It's allowing people to march and express their opinions and emotions, but putting, tagging a building and creating it fuels a vibe that we don't want, right? We don't want to see our city trashed. It's demoralizing for people to see it. Also, I know we've been talking about this. It's so important to note. A lot of this stuff has been happening in very concentrated corners of the city. By the City Hall area, which is near the detention center, and then obviously last night we had issues in Little Tokyo. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to play down. There was violence, and there definitely were people attacking law enforcement, throwing things at them, shooting fireworks at them. But to say that like our city is burning, or that I saw some influencers posting today that Little Tokyo was destroyed and these things, it's not destroyed. There's damage, yes. There's vandalism. It's unacceptable, but let's be honest about what we're talking about here, and not make it sound like Los Angeles is in some sort of like riot state. I mean, Pat, you were talking to Mayor Bass last night, and in your conversation with her, both of you were talking about how this is nowhere, doesn't even register in the same tier as, say, the riots in LA in the 1990s. This is completely different.
And that's very, very true, Tom. And it's good to see that people actually were in Little Tokyo volunteering to clean up some of the vandalism there. We want to bring Mike back into the conversation. I was listening to Tom saying that for the most part, this is where the protests have taken place. We've heard about, Santa Ana in terms of the raids taking place. I'm wondering, can you confirm, you mentioned Ventura County. I heard they were actually out, some of the ICE agents were in Camarillo going after some of the field workers there. Can you confirm that?
Right, we had seen some social media reports of that. The FBI confirmed that they did do an immigration enforcement action in Ventura. The FBI would not get more specific as to exactly where they conducted that operation, and I can actually read you the tweet from the FBI if you just give me 2 seconds, and I'll tell you exactly what they say. Partner agencies conducted immigration enforcement operations in the Ventura County area today. The picture that they tweeted, you see somebody that is in custody there by FBI and it looks like Department of Homeland Security in an area that could potentially look like a field. There is some, like I mentioned, video out there which would indicate, kind of the same thing there. So yes, the operation, there was an operation in Oxnard today, or in Ventura County rather. There was also one of our colleagues has video from a family member of another operation happening in Paramount this afternoon at a Home Depot. So these operations are still continuing. I will say they don't seem to be as visible as the ones that we saw Friday and Saturday. I don't know if that's intentional, if they're just trying to, kind of get in, do their thing and get out, but they are still continuing.
Well, from what I understand, what I heard is this operation happened at like 6 in the morning, and it was at, there are so many strawberry fields and produce in the Camarillo, Oxnard area, a lot of huge farms. So, we haven't heard much about it, obviously, but I bring that up because of just the different areas that they're going to, and the people that up until this day, we still don't necessarily have an explanation as to who is being picked up.
Right. We'll get, kind of these bulk statements from ICE that, as I mentioned, have listed a number of crimes. It's hard for us to verify all of those. They don't always give us all of the details that we're asking for in those situations. The other issue with us, as journalists, is running into exactly which agency we should reach out to, because whatever agency is conducting the operation is the one that we've got to deal with. So it's either Border Patrol, and it all sounds like it's the same group, but it's not. There's different agencies for us to kind of deal with and reach out to. We don't always hear back, or they refer us out somewhere else. So there are kind of difficulties in figuring out some of these operations, and certainly names is not something they usually give us. Although I will say some of the federal agencies have started to tweet photos and pictures of people that they are arresting in some of these situations. So we're trying to vet out some of that information that is coming from them, obviously before we show it to you on TV or provide some of that information to you.
And the unpredictability of it all, right? We don't know when they're going to go, how many people they're going to take, which agency it's going to be, where they're going to take the people they detain, what time they're going to go. So it's a lot of questions, just as journalists, as you said, that we're trying to figure out too. And a lot of family members are trying to figure out kind of what's happening and whether people should go to work, whether, family members want to go to graduations that are happening happening right now. There are so many questions happening in terms of these ICE raids. I think yesterday there was a statement that came out from Washington, D.C., right, from the Trump administration saying that there have been 5 ICE raids.
Yes, I think the mayor pointed that out too, that yesterday there were 5, yeah. And today, I mean, you know, we know on our own that there were at least 2. We don't know if there were additional ones other than that. So it's kind of hard to tell because they are able to, you know, I don't want to say cherry pick, but they're able to give the information they want to give and not give the information they don't want to give. And that makes it hard to get a clear picture.
Well, but that's true. That also gives an idea that it doesn't matter. I mean, when you know, a Home Depot parking lot in Paramount or in a city, you know, in Santa Ana, as compared to a field in Camarillo,
right,
you know, in an orchard, that's very, very different.
Right.
And if that's the case, that certainly gives an idea as to, you know, what they're doing or who they're going after. And I haven't heard anything about the Central Valley, but it makes you wonder.
And it also raises questions about, are these federal troops being deployed in preparation for something else, aside from just perhaps civil unrest and protests and arrests in the street in downtown LA? Is there something bigger to come? I think last night when we heard from Mayor Bash, she said it could be the next 90 days. She doesn't really know. So there are so many plans that need to be made at the state and local level to prepare for all of this, and not really knowing what's coming in terms of even just the law enforcement, in terms of police presence.
Right,
Yeah.
and you know, last night we spent a lot of time trying to figure out where these Marines were coming into, and ultimately we finally found them today. They're actually down in Seal Beach and Los Alamitos, and it looks like we've got Mayor Bass and Chief Jim McDonnell walking up to the podium here to provide an update on exactly what's been going on.
Yeah, good. Is everybody in place? Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to let the city know that I have declared a local emergency and issued a curfew for downtown Los Angeles to stop the vandalism, to stop the looting. Many businesses have now been affected by or vandalized. Last night, there were 23 businesses that were looted. And I think that if you drive through downtown LA, the graffiti is everywhere and has caused significant damages to businesses and a number of properties. So my message to you, if you do not live or work in downtown LA, avoid the area. Law enforcement arrest individuals who break the curfew, and you will be prosecuted. Officers, police, and sheriff from across the region are working alongside LA through a unified command structure. The curfew will be in place tonight from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. I want to thank the governor for his partnership, and especially thank our state and local and deputies, officers, and we're working tirelessly. So curfew guidance, again, it will begin at 8 p.m. tonight and go until 6 a.m. tomorrow. I will consult with elected leaders and law enforcement officials tomorrow on the continuation of the. We certainly expect for it to last for several days. The curfew area will be between the 5 freeway and to the 110 and the 10 freeway, to where the 110 freeway and 5 freeway merge. You map and you can see that the city of Los Angeles is a massive area, 502 square miles. The area of downtown where the curfew will take place is 1 square mile. I think it is important to point this out, not to minimize the vandalism and violence that has taken place there. It has been significant, but it is extremely important to know that what is happening in this 1 square mile is not affecting the city. Some of the imagery of the protests and the violence gives the appearance as though this is a citywide crisis, and it is not. So everyone must abide by this curfew. Limited exceptions will apply for residents, people traveling to and from work, and credentialed media representatives. With that, I would like to turn it over to Chief Jim McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor Bass. Good afternoon, everyone. As the mayor stated, a curfew for the impacted area shown here will go into effect tonight. And I want to be absolutely clear that if you're within that designated curfew zone between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. And are not exempt under the order, you're going to be subject to arrest. The curfew boundaries are as follows: from the 5 freeway to the 110 freeway, and from the 10 freeway to the point where the 110 and the 5 merge. Easier to look at it on that map for description. The curfew is a necessary measure to protect lives and safeguard property following several consecutive days of growing unrest throughout the city. Since Saturday, we've seen a concerning escalation in unlawful and dangerous behavior. On Saturday, LAPD officers made 27 arrests. On Sunday, that number rose to 40. By Monday, arrests totaled 114, and today alone, we've made 197 arrests. The recent days, it's been as a part of a unified command with our partner agencies who've responded through mutual aid compact and been very, very helpful to us, and we're very thankful for that participation. Of those I mentioned for today, 130 were arrested near Commercial and Alameda. An additional 67 were taken into custody after unlawfully occupying the 101 freeway near Commercial Street. Our CHP partners were instrumental in that. So again, let me be clear that this behavior, blocking freeways, city streets, and on-ramps, refusing to comply with lawful dispersal orders, and interfering with public safety operations is dangerous, unlawful, and won't be tolerated. If you are in the curfew zone during the restricted hours without that legal exemption, you will be arrested. If you assault an officer in any fashion, you will be arrested. We're operating under a unified command with our partners at the Los Angeles City Fire Department, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, the California Highway Patrol. Coordinated, and our shared mission is clear: to restore peace and ensure the safety of everyone in our city. We previously mobilized part of our department at LAPD while keeping our ability to be able to provide the services that our community deserves going. We're going to be adding to that deployment with additional internal LAPD resources in the days ahead. The curfew does not apply to residents within the designated area, individuals experiencing homelessness, credentialed media, or public safety and emergency personnel. To be clear again, that's not about silencing voices or suppressing lawful protest. When that expression crosses into unlawful conduct, when lives are put at risk, and when our city's safety is compromised, we must act, and we will act. We urge all Angelenos to cooperate with these public safety measures. Our shared goal is to protect our communities and return to a state of calm and safety for everyone. Thank you.
Let me introduce now the councilwoman who represents the majority of the district, Councilwoman Isabel Harato.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here today not just as the council member who represents downtown LA, but as its advocate who deeply loves and believes in this community. The history of Los Angeles began right here in downtown, where 200 years later, the grouping of historic neighborhoods remains the beating heart of our city, a place with rich culture and deep community. Downtown LA is a place where workers clock in before sunrise and small business owners know their customers by name, where neighbors greet each other on the sidewalk, and where generations of families have built lives, shared stories, made memories together side by side. It's one of the most vibrant and resilient and hopeful parts of our city. But too often, downtown LA is treated like a backdrop for major events, not the living, breathing community it is. And right now, it's hurting. I am deeply proud that downtown has always been the place where Angelenos from all over the city gather to peacefully protest. I support the right to demonstrate, and the mayor and I know that right is sacred, and at times it's necessary, but we must also face what's happening right now. When these peaceful rallies end and the protesters head home, another element moves in: opportunists who come in under the cover of a peaceful protest to ravage and destroy. They are ruining local small businesses, smashing storefronts, and threatening the safety of the very community that has always welcomed people from across the city and globe. This isn't just broken glass or stolen goods, it's someone's livelihood, someone's safe space, someone's home that's been violated. And it's happening in a neighborhood where working class families are just trying to live. Our street vendors, our garment workers, many of whom are immigrants, continue to watch their communities be torn apart. And that's why I'm thankful the mayor for leveraging this tool, enacting a curfew to begin tonight. This has been something that many of my constituents in downtown have been calling for what they're facing. This curfew is not about silencing protests. It's about protecting people and ensuring that the local residents, small businesses, our families, our elders, and our workers are not left vulnerable to those who come only to destroy. What happens in downtown reverberates all throughout LA, and when we protect downtown, we protect our city. And we're investing in its future, and we invest in our shared future. So to my colleagues and to our residents and everyone watching, downtown LA is not just a center for the First Amendment expression, it's a community. It's a home, and the people in it deserve our protection and care. That path ahead may be uncertain, but our responsibility to protect and uplift this neighborhood is not. I want to close this message from my constituents so that you hear them loud and clear. Downtown LA is home. Please keep it safe. Keep each other safe. Thank you, Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. I'd now like to introduce Nella McCosker, who is the CEO of the Central City Association. We were having conversations this morning about a couple of things. One, the ongoing problem with violence, but also the need, when all of this subsides, is to repair and restore downtown Los Angeles, especially the businesses and properties that have been hit with graffiti. Nella McCosker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council Member. The swift action today to take a look at and examine how this curfew could be put in place is a good example of the leadership we see and continue to need for downtown. CCA, or Central City Association, represents businesses, institutions, nonprofits, the fabric of downtown Los Angeles that also represents the wider city. And it is the case that downtown is a neighborhood. It is the case that downtown is where immigrant-owned businesses try to operate and thrive. And so we can differentiate between downtown being a place to gather, to have your voice be heard, to peacefully protest, and the actions that we've seen each evening since this occurred in the last few days. So thank you for applying this tool. There are others certainly that we could look at as well, but hopefully Angelenos rally together in support of this really important section of our city because of the symbol and of the benefits it provides to everyone across Los Angeles. Thank you.
I'd like to open up for questions, but before I acknowledge Dr. Earl Suthers, who is the president.
We'd like to welcome our viewers to KCAL News at 6, and we are in the middle of a press conference given by Mayor Karen Bass.
The problem is that we don't know how long these raids are going to go on. If they're going to go on for 30 days, that's what the rumor is. And if we want to see our city peaceful again, I will call upon the administration one more time to end the raids. With that, let's open it up for questions.
I have a question for Mayor Bass and for Councilmember Jurado. For the mayor, what changed today that made you think that the curfew was now necessary? Last night was definitely not the first night where graffiti and vandalism and some violence were happening in the city, so why did you decide now that it was time for the curfew? And for Councilmember Jurado, after you called certain elements opportunists, ravaging and destroying the community, one of your staffers was arrested downtown, and now there's a curfew in your district, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that and how you're feeling about the situation with one of your staffers.
Let me just say that a curfew has been in consideration for several days, but clearly after the violence that took place last night, 23 businesses looted, and just the extensive, widespread nature of the vandalism, we reached a tipping point and declared a state of emergency and called for the curfew. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you for that question. Yes, I'm aware of what's happened to my staff member. They're on unpaid leave right now. I hold my staff to the highest standards while I wait to see due process, and so we'll see the outcome of that. But I see that as separate and apart from a reaction to what our constituents want in the city and how this type of opportunism has escalated between yesterday and the day before. And, you know, frankly, I admit my humility here and my beginnerness in that I'm new to downtown, but our downtown stakeholders have seen this multiple times over and had to basically develop their own strategies. And they saw the warning signs of how this could get worse. And they knew from past experiences that curfews have been ways in order to stem this and to calm the city once again. And it's but one tool that we can execute at this time.
Mayor Bass, I know that you were referencing that there have been 23 businesses that have now been damaged, broken into, looted. Looking at videos of the Apple Store and Adidas. Any sort of estimate of the cost of damage at this point with all this vandalism? And also, what is the latest on the Marines arriving here? And has there been anything else about what their mission will be?
So there is not a financial estimate right now, unless Nella has one.
In the case of,
do you want to?
It's millions. In the case of some of the larger, retail stores, it's in the millions. But I don't know of the 23 what the total is.
And I think it's really hard to estimate the vandalism from the graffiti. It's just widespread. I know that you have seen it.
And as far as the Marines arriving?
Oh, I'm sorry. You did ask that question. Who knows? I mean, I don't know if you know, Chief. I mean, the bottom line is that we're not told. Basically, we have to operate on rumors. So rumor has it that there's 700 Marines that are going to come here. I have no idea what they would do when they would get here. Right now, we have 100 National Guard whose sole mission is to protect the federal building downtown. That's 100. There's another 100 in Westwood protecting the federal building there. And I haven't heard of any protests that had anything to do with ICE taking place at the Westwood Federal Building, unless you have, Chief. Right. So we just don't know. And I think that's a problem with the administration, because to come in such a massive way and to make the announcements that all of this was going to happen and then not communicate it with the local jurisdiction as to when, what, how, why is really problematic.
Curfew to be in this evening, dusk to dawn.
8 p.m. tonight.
8 p.m. tonight until
6 a.m.
Last time we had a curfew like that was under Mayor Bradley. I think it was 3 days. Are you taking this day by day at this point? That's one question. Then as a second one, when do you plan on reaching out to Donald Trump, President Trump? You said you want to talk with him, that you will reach out.
Actually, I started that reach out today, so we will see what happens. I will keep you posted.
Can you update us on the parameters of the curfew area? I just want to make sure people heard that.
Yes, and it's the map that is right there. So it basically is all of downtown Los Angeles. But, you know, in LA, we identify by our freeways. So all of the freeway numbers are there, 110, the 5, the 10.
This is the area where the protests have been focused.
Yes, and actually that's a broader area that the protests have been focused. You know that the protests have been limited to about 5 streets in downtown Los Angeles. And again, that's why it's so important to let the people know this is not all of Los Angeles. If you put downtown Los Angeles in the context of the overall city map, you see how big it is. 1 square mile compared to 503 square miles.
Mayor, in terms of what the federal authorities are doing, I know you're saying they're not telling you when they're going to be doing these various raids. Are you getting anywhere in terms of cooperation of notifying your police agencies in advance so they can make some plans to deploy, if necessary, to some of the local communities?
No, we're not. No, we're not. And we also don't know, again, about the ICE raids. And that's why I think, you know, I would appeal to the president to stop the ICE raids so that we can have stability in our city. I think about the families who are afraid to go to work and go to school. I was talking to a friend today who, in her local grocery store, the shelves were empty. A lot of the shelves were empty because people aren't coming to work to stock the shelves. We have to look at the contributions that the immigrant population makes to our local economy. And you do know that there are some industries that are the majority are immigrant labor. And so when you frighten immigrants and they don't want to come to work, you are hitting at the heart of our local economy. The nannies that can't show up, the gardeners that can't show up. That impacts households in a way that I don't think people often realize the extent. And so I think I missed the first part of it. He said the reason why the wildfires were handled was because there were federal police?
He said it would look similar to how it did during the wildfires here and the aftermath if they didn't have the federal law enforcement here.
Yeah, I don't know, Chief. Maybe you want to respond to that. I don't think that question, and sometimes what the president says, it's difficult to kind of understand. What I will tell you, though, is that after the wildfires, were out, the president made sure we had ample resources with the Army Corps of Engineers, and it was a significant contributing factor to us having the fastest recovery of any location in comparison to where other wildfires have taken place. It contributed to the fact that in the Palisades now, we have over 2,700 lots that are cleared where people can be rebuilding now. I was at a property a couple of weeks ago where the frame of the house is already up. This, to me, is drastically different. That was in complete cooperation and coordination with the federal government. Right now, we are in the dark. We don't know when things are going to happen. One thing we're sure about, and I think the chief would agree with me, is that we have the capacity to address this situation here, and we don't need armies or National Guard, especially that we didn't even ask for. And the idea that the president took the power away from the governor to do this it was really just unacceptable. But Chief, did you want to, if you want to?
Thank you. To that issue, we have a protocol in place that we use, and when we are dealing with something like this where it takes some resources away from our regular patrol duties and ability to provide the service we do, we mobilize the department, and so that brings in people from vacation and days off and allows us to use them. We've mobilized the Office of Operations, the biggest part of the department, and our motor officers. We're looking to expand that with additional officers from within. We requested through the Sheriff mutual aid, which then is coordinated by the Office of Emergency Management in the state, Emergency Services, with the sheriff, and they bring in then surrounding communities and in this case counties to be able to help supplement our resources to deal with the issues at hand. They are tremendous partners. We've worked very closely together for the past couple of days now, and I think we have seen a significant improvement in things, and we will continue to watch for that as we move forward. We're hopeful with this curfew that'll give us additional tool as well to be able to bring this chapter to a close.
When we heard from you this weekend, you mentioned officers being overwhelmed and you needing to get into a position where you could make large-scale arrests, and that you were considering that you said it was really too early to determine whether or not the National Guard was necessary on the city streets. Given what you've just said, have you reevaluated the potential need for the National Guard?
Yeah, and I guess the sequence would be, as I mentioned, we request mutual aid, partner agencies from throughout, in this case, the 7-county area. The next step then, if we weren't able to handle the issue, is to request through the sheriff to the governor and the emergency OES at the state National Guard to be deployed. We are nowhere near that. In this environment, we believe we can do what we need to do with the resources that we now have access to, and I think we've seen a dramatic increase in arrests over the last couple of days. I believe that will continue, and that will help bring some order to what we've seen in the past few days. So, no.
Hey, Chief, what does it mean? I'm seeing where the Emergency Operations Center at level 2 activation. What does that mean to the people of LA to know we're at level 2?
Yeah, anybody want to? Yeah, go ahead. Probably more specifically, Chief Choi.
Chief Chow, that's okay. Blake Chow from Office of Special Operations. So just like our Department of Operations Center across the hall, when we get into a emergency that needs to be managed, the EOC can be pushed up to a level 2, and that means all the other city departments that work for the mayor come in and have a rep here, and we're able to coordinate city response to anything that's going on within the city. That's what level 2 is.
Let me also just add to your question that you were asking. You know, now that the president has taken over authority of the National Guard, Chief, when you were describing the way it should go, now that has been disrupted, and I think that that's important. I know one of the things that the chief said that we're going to focus on is trying to gather as many local resources as possible, and that includes Los Angeles police officers and trying to bolster the officers that will be stationed downtown, because downtown is where the crisis is right now. Yes, any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, you've been listening to a press conference by Mayor Karen Bass and Police Chief Jim McDonald, as well as other representatives from the city of Los Angeles. And the breaking news here is that there is a curfew. She has declared a local emergency. There is a curfew going into effect tonight at 8 p.m., lasting until 6 a.m. The curfew will last for 1 square mile of the downtown area, 5 freeway to the 110, the 10 freeway to where the 110 and the 5 freeway merge. And from what we've heard from the mayor, she is imposing this curfew because 23 businesses have been looted so far. And she says graffiti is everywhere. If you don't live or work in the area, you should avoid it. Mike Rogers, question to you.
Yeah.
How are people going to find out about this, the people that are already there? Do we know of specific businesses, restaurants in that 1 square mile area that she's talking about? Because if so, that's going to impact them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, a couple of things. I mean, we'll likely see them do the wireless emergency alerts. We know that on Sunday night they use those to tell the crowd to disperse. So that will likely go out to that geographical area. If it hasn't already, it probably will soon. I'm sure they'll use that method. Law enforcement in the area will start notifying people that are there that in, hey, about an hour and 45 minutes, a curfew goes into effect. Certainly, Pat, there are restaurants and businesses. I want to ask Mike Parrott if we can show my computer here. Excuse me. This is the area that we are talking about. So it is a very, very, very large section of downtown LA that we are talking about. Dodger Stadium, for reference, is right there. So you're looking at all of the freeways that come down here. And the reason it is such a large area is because, you know, Sunday night it was in Chinatown. Most of the this week it has been kind of along the 101 freeway here from the, you know, City Hall, the Federal Building, all of that. We also saw it down here at LA Live. So it really has popped up. They were in the Arts District last night as well. So when you see why they are doing it in such a large geographical area, well, if you hear the mayor, she actually refers to it as a small geographical area, but it is a large portion. It is all of downtown LA, and then up, as you mentioned, Pat, to the 5 and the 110 split right there where it comes together. So they're incorporating a big section of downtown LA for this area. Businesses certainly will be impacted. Now, it'll be used as a tool to basically, you know, we saw this during some of the fires as well in the, you know, the evacuation zone areas. It basically will be used as a tool. LAPD will no longer have to issue dispersal orders. They'll no longer have to issue unlawful assemblies. After 8 o'clock, if you're there and you have no business there, game over, you can be arrested.
You're getting arrested.
You can be arrested. And it's the people that have legitimate purposes there are, you know, people that she said that live in the area, credentialed journalists. Certainly if you're going to and from work, you'll do that. Remember, we saw this during 2020. They issued curfews citywide during 2020. Remember here, we actually carried letters with us that said we were okay to move about the city throughout the course of this. So they will be targeting people that are up to no good, you know, and the people that live in downtown and work in downtown certainly will be allowed to come and go, but they shouldn't be just kind of roaming the streets like we are seeing this group now. So about an hour and 45 minutes that's supposed to go in place.
Okay, well, you know, wondering if they have more buses downtown. I'm just wondering because some people may want to be arrested, as we saw earlier today, and that is certainly going to happen. At 8 o'clock.
And I did hear from a source with a law enforcement source tonight that tells me this is the first day that they've had dedicated booking teams, dedicated arrest and booking teams for this incident.
And from what we heard, she said this is probably going to last 30 days.
Yeah, as long as it takes to make sure that this doesn't, continue on. It's a local state of emergency within the downtown area. We do expect a press conference from Governor Gavin Newsom coming up at 6:30. So we will hear what additional information he says. His team telling us it's a major announcement. So we'll be unclear exactly what that major announcement is. But we are expecting Governor Gavin Newsom to speak, in about 10 or 15 minutes here, Pat.
Okay, Mike. Well, let's go back to our Jeff Nguyen, who is in downtown Los Angeles. Jeff, I'm sure you heard us talking, and you are aware that a curfew is going to take effect in less than 2 hours from now, 8 p.m. tonight until 6 a.m.
Yeah, it's very understandable because last night here in Little Tokyo, the streets echoed with fireworks, and some of the community's cultural landmarks were targeted and vandalized.
To tag this building is like spitting in the face of everything.
Susan Jacaro says she has so many reasons to be angry.
I understand people are angry. I totally get it, but people need to channel that anger.
She and this group of people took part in the demonstrations against the ICE operations in LA, but they condemned the violence and vandalism against landmarks like the Japanese American National Museum in Little Tokyo. Gina Hong Thompson lives at the Tokyo Towers. She had to rely on her dog for comfort as fireworks echoed around the affordable housing complex for older adults.
I feel like it's some war. I've never been war.
The images of disturbances scared her children who live locally and out of state.
What were your children saying to you?
Mom, don't go outside.
That's because coverage showed this burning car outside the church, attended by a number of people who live at the Tokyo Towers. At the Little Tokyo Service Center, staffers pleaded with people Monday night to not vandalize the complex that also provides affordable housing.
A lot of the work that we're doing is just letting people know that Little Tokyo is a home to people, and that's like kind of what's most important for people to know.
Back at the museum, fencing went up Tuesday. What's the significance of this courtyard?
This courtyard is holy ground for the Japanese American community.
The chair of the Board of Trustees says the museum has championed civil rights. One of its missions, educating people about how this part of LA was tied to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
Where thousands of Japanese Americans were taken, forced on the buses.
LTSC had planned on unveiling a new affordable housing apartment complex tomorrow, but that grand opening has been postponed because of all of the recent disturbances. We're reporting live in Little Tokyo. Jeff Nguyen, KCAL News.
All right, Jeff. Well, glad to see people pitching in and trying to clean up some of that graffiti. And where are you again exactly? Because you look kind of lonely out there now.
Yeah, so we are right on the outskirt of Little Tokyo, so basically near Los Angeles. And first, for those of us who grew up in Southern California, that Chase building was the old Sumitomo Bank building, and then you got the Miyako Hotel. On the flip side of the Miyako Hotel is that big mural of Shohei Ohtani, and then right across the street is exactly where the museum is, Pat.
All right, Jeff. Well, I imagine there's going to be a lot more activity in the next couple of hours or so, or after, trying to get people out of there. Thanks so much, Jeff. We're going to go to our colleague, Lori Perez. Now, she is attending an interfaith service, and then this is happening in downtown Los Angeles at Grant Park. And Lori, they're holding a response to the ICE raids that have happened, right?
That's right, Pat. And, a much different response, perhaps, than the one that we have been seeing play out on the streets of downtown Los Angeles over the last couple of days, particularly at night. This is a group of a few hundred people who have gathered here in Gloria Molina Park. They say to create a space of peace and prayer, in their words, to practice and promote non-violence. They would argue, I believe, that they are equally as passionate about calling for an end to the violence of immigration raids that they have seen, and calling for bipartisan immigration reform, but they want to do it in a non-violent way. And so, in the last 20 minutes since this ceremony began, this service began, they have been singing songs, and different members of different faith groups from throughout Los Angeles have been leading this group in prayer. At one point, they asked people to hold up, they had asked people to bring symbols of their loved ones who have been detained or who are at risk of being detained. They asked them to hold up pictures or perhaps pieces of clothing or food that they had harvested as symbols of those people. They did that, and then they prayed over those items in honor of those people. They say they are standing with those, in their words, who are seen as disposable. This is a growing crowd, I will say. This started at 6 o'clock, and since we've been here, more and more people are arriving here at the park, trying to spread a message, equally passionate, again, about their opposition to what is happening with the immigration raids, but trying to do so in a different way, in a less aggressive way than perhaps that we have seen on the streets. Pat, back to you.
Thank you so much, Lori. Now, many protesters have been in downtown LA since the ICE raids began. At first, they say it was because they wanted to show solidarity with people being deported, but now they say it's because of the presence of the National Guard and Marines.
The presence of the National Guard really galvanized me. And then I'm back here today because of sending the Marines in, because I see this as an unlawful invasion of California sovereignty. And I believe the administration is putting these poor guys in a horrible position too, probably to take actions against their own community that they wish they didn't have to do.
A federal judge has denied California's request for an emergency order to block the Trump administration from using the state's National Guard for immigration enforcement. But the judge set a hearing for Thursday afternoon so both sides can present their arguments. Lawyers for the state want to prevent troops from accompanying federal agents on immigration raids. But in the lawsuit, the attorneys said they are not seeking to block the National Guard from protecting federal buildings. The lawsuit comes a day after California Governor Gavin Newsom sued President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. The Pentagon says the deployment of the National Guard and Marines will cost the city $134 million. President Trump says the National Guard will stay in the LA area until there is no danger. Now, SkyCal over Los Alamitos Joint Forces training base this afternoon, and this appears to be the staging area for the military deployed to the LA area by President Trump. You can see several military vehicles and tents sprawled across the fields. And over at Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station, SkyCal picked up military troops doing some kind of training on the baseball field. We asked what kind of training and were referred to U.S. Northern Command Public Affairs. Meantime, Governor Newsom claims the 2,000 additional National Guard troops being deployed will impact the state's wildfire prevention and fentanyl task force efforts.
These are the National Guard men and women that have been out there protecting you here in Southern California during the fires, after the fires. We are now taking many of them off assignments on forest management, protecting communities, vulnerable communities against summer and wildfire season. We're removing them from task forces that we've created to deal with fentanyl interdiction. I have 394 National Guard men and women down at the border. I imagine they may even be pulled for this theatrical display of toughness by a president of the United States who's unhinged and has now crossed a red line in this country.
Governor Newsom has been meeting with local and state officials to see how they can keep the peace. And the governor is expected to address the raids and the military in a news conference tonight at about 6:30. We'll bring it to you live on KCAL Los Angeles, Channel 9. Now, for those keeping track, these raids and subsequent protests have drawn a massive response from LAPD, LA County, CHP, the National Guard, and now the Marine Corps on top of immigration enforcement. LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell sat down with CBS News this afternoon in regards to the president's claim that the military is here to keep the peace. McDonnell says it is unnecessary and, frankly, not true.
We don't need the National Guard, and they're not here to help us right now. They're here to facilitate what the federal agencies are doing on the immigration front.
And why do you worry about having the Marines here?
Because we don't know what their mission is. It's not clearly defined for us at this point. Our role here is, like I said, very different. It's to restore order on the streets of Los Angeles, in that very small part of Los Angeles that is impacted, and we have a protocol for that with our mutual aid partners.
Photos from ICE posted today show National Guard troops protecting immigration agents as they made arrests around Southern California. Now, LA County supervisors voted today to take action in response to immigration raids. They passed a motion directing the county's Office of Immigration Affairs to immediately work with community-based groups to assess any gaps in the county's rapid response network. The directive also calls on Immigration Affairs to connect affected residents with critical services, including mental health and workforce support. All right, now back to our breaking news. KCAL live over downtown LA for a fifth evening of protests over immigration raids. We see protesters on the move there. Let's check back in on KCAL and our Mike Rogers.
Yeah, hey Pat, so we're monitoring this. They are on Hope Street, and this is, one of the reasons that the mayor wanted to do the curfew across the whole city, because these guys have made quite a significant amount, or covered quite a significant amount of ground, rather, I should say. They've also made it down to Hope Street, which is coming up on Crypto.com Arena, the LA Live area, which they were last night. The group, as we have been watching, as we have been saying throughout the majority of this afternoon, has been peaceful. We have seen, small instances, as you saw in Tom Waite's live shot, where they were tagging the wall there. We have seen some mini bikes join in on this as well, but large in a way, the group is just marching. They've got flags, they've got signs, they're marching through the streets. We haven't seen a lot of problems. LAPD has been monitoring this from the air. I have not seen a lot of officers on the ground keeping any kind of eye on this, but they are paying attention to this very closely with one of their LAPD helicopters. There is also a CHP fixed wing that has been up in the air for a very, very long time, high up like 8,000 feet, monitoring the situation as well. So everyone's got eyes on this. At the moment, they remain peaceful, but as we now know, the curfew begins at 8 p.m. This area will be under that curfew, so these protesters have about an hour and a half before they would face arrest for being in a curfew area past that said curfew, Pat. So again, they are marching down the street here in the area of Hope Street and about 11th. So we'll continue to monitor where their progress is, but no real rhyme or reason. They've gone in a couple of circles. They've gone up towards the 110. They've come back down. And as I mentioned, we are getting kind of close to the Crypto.com Arena and LA Live area.
Okay, and that's going to be interesting how, if they're going to close portions of Freeway, how people are going to get out as well. We want to thank you for watching KCAL News at 6 on CBS Los Angeles. Our coverage of the protests will continue on KCAL Los Angeles Channel 9 right now. For our Channel 2 viewers, the CBS Evening News is next, and anchor Maurice Dubois is here in LA covering the protests. Right now, KCAL's Michelle Gili shows us the cleanup and the consequences for those demonstrators. All right, we continue our coverage on KCAL 9, or I should say KCAL News on Channel 9 about the protests happening in downtown Los Angeles. We do know that a curfew has been put into effect 8 p.m. tonight until 6 a.m., and it covers 1 square mile of the downtown Los Angeles area. Mayor Bass saying she has done that because at least 23 businesses have been vandalized and there is graffiti all over. They feel that this will give them an opportunity to not only clean up, but to police the area better and keep people that are not really involved in protests and that want to have destructive moves and do damage in the city. That's another reason why she has put this curfew in place. There was another protest yesterday in Orange County that got pretty tense as well. We're going to give you that story in just a moment, but we understand that Governor Newsom is holding a news conference right now. Okay, we are working on the audio. Not sure if that's on the governor's end, but we're working to get that production up and running for you so you can listen in. We certainly will have excerpts of what the governor has said, but we're efforting to get the audio working so we can hear Governor Newsom's speech. We do know that he did file a lawsuit to block President Trump from deploying the National Guard, but that order was blocked by a federal judge. So we're not exactly sure what this press conference is about, but we are trying to bring that to you very shortly. This, of course, comes on top of the news from Mayor Bass that a curfew has been imposed in 1 square mile of the downtown Los Angeles area. All right, we're taking a chopper shot from KCAL and this particular street. I'm going to bring in Mike Rogers to tell us where this is. And again, Mike, if we could just talk about how people are going to leave the area when they're going to shut down a portion of the freeway.
Yeah, they're supposed to be leaving the area. I mean, there's a number of surface streets they could get out and get through to, and you know, hopefully that'll be done. And Pat, you can see where we're at, where those graffiti towers are that are still there. That was so problematic for downtown Los Angeles. So we are getting close to the area here near LA Live. There you see Crypto.com right to the left there. So that's where they're walking right now. Peacock Theater is in this area, Crypto.com Arena. So they are pushing through here and really extending kind of the boundaries of the downtown LA area. I mean, when this protest, this march started, they were up near the City Hall area, near the 101 Freeway, where Jeff Nguyen was, near Union Station. So then they started to do this march, and they have covered a significant amount of ground. And at this point, they have not they've not tried to do anything with this. Law enforcement has not, I should say. Law enforcement has not made any attempts to break this up. They've not made any attempts to push them in any kind of direction. I would assume at this point they're just going to kind of let that curfew take place and then make a decision one way or another how they want to handle it from there. Obviously, I would expect our local law enforcement to do this the way that they typically do when we have curfews and an unlawful assembly type situations, where they'll give people plenty of warnings and try to get them to get out of the area, and then eventually you'll see arrests. The difference tonight, though, is law enforcement will be able to stop anyone in the downtown LA area after 8 p.m. and verify that they have a legitimate reason to be there. They don't need necessarily probable cause to make that stop. They don't need to give unlawful assembly orders. They don't need to give dispersal orders after that 8 p.m. So it really allows law enforcement to say, hey, you're here, you shouldn't be, get out, go away. Otherwise, you will go to jail. And if they don't, then they will be arrested. So, Pat, we're still waiting for that press conference from Governor Newsom. It does appear it's on his end. I checked a couple of our different feeds here. There was no audio on any of them, and then they just kind of stopped it. So we'll see if they restart that once they figure out their audio issues. But it'll be interesting to see what his message is tonight, Pat.
That's for sure. We know about that lawsuit that he filed being blocked for the time. I believe the judge didn't say this was indefinite, but not right now. He was not going to agree to what Governor Newsom and Attorney General Bonta asked for in that lawsuit, to block the militarization from President Trump.
And they want to do oral arguments. The judge wants to hear oral arguments from the two sides.
Okay, but right now we're going to go to our Lori Perez. She is at Faith Gathering, an Interfaith gathering in downtown Los Angeles, where they are holding a vigil. They're having prayers in response to the ICE raids. And it looks like they still have speakers, Lori.
They do, Pat. And in fact, I just heard the woman behind me right now calling for a prayer for all those people who are detained. Additionally, just a few minutes ago, I heard them making the announcement about that curfew, letting the crowd know here that was in place, and advising them about what that means for people who are here in downtown Los Angeles. I will, remark once again, this is the image, perhaps, that most people hoped that the protests would be over the past few days. This is a group of hundreds of people continuing to grow, a group of people who are hosted by the Archdiocese's Immigration Task Force and other interfaith leaders and community leaders from throughout the city and the county. They, in their words, oh, yep, and I think you can see that Mayor Bass is up here right now. I wonder if we can hear. Hold on.
Maybe I should just sit here. Maybe I shouldn't go to my appointment that I have papers for and I am legal and I go to report on an annual basis and I find out that somebody else was detained. Maybe I shouldn't do that. We cannot accept the uncertainty that has been created in this environment here today, led by the leadership in Washington, D.C. We cannot accept that. It must end. And let me just say that years ago, I saw family separation up close and personal. I was in McMillan, Texas. I saw those children when they were being reunited with their parents, the toddlers. They went to see their mothers and their fathers came to talk to them, and the kids were in shock because they didn't know what to do. The trauma that those kids experienced then will be trauma that will carry them throughout their lives. And the fear that is happening now, if your mother, if your father, if your brother, if your spouse was detained, that fear of not being able to find them, not knowing where they're going, not knowing if they're going to another country, maybe a country that they are completely unfamiliar with, this should not be the policy of our nation. I'd like to ask you to join me in prayer. Eternal God, in these days of great challenge for our city, state, and country, we turn to you for guidance and strength. You are our present help in the time of trouble. We pray for our city and neighboring cities as we face an unprecedented moment to obey the law of the land while protecting the lives of Angelenos who seek to earn an honest living, educate and care for their young, and live in peace and freedom. A city of many peoples is our Los Angeles. Many religions, traditions, from many places, many languages and backgrounds to live together, a marvelous mosaic where even our differences are part of our strength. We value the worth and dignity of every person. May we recognize in Los Angeles this evening that it is our refusal to give in to violence and retaliation. And with that, we will stick together. We will not allow anyone to divide us. We will fight for all Angelenos, regardless of when they came here, where they were from, or how they got here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so you heard there from Mayor Bass leading this crowd in prayer, asking them for the prayers of the families who, in her words, are living in fear, afraid to go to school and appointments and work, saying they should not do that. And again, reiterating her call for an end to the raids. This is a crowd here. Something's happening behind me, I'm not quite sure, but this is a crowd here again that they say they are here to promote nonviolence, and they are hoping for nonviolence and peace on the streets even as these protests continue. We are live in Gloria Molina Park. I'm Lori Perez, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Lori. Obviously, quite a few things going on in downtown Los Angeles this evening, because as we are turning from Lori's interfaith service coverage at Gloria Molina Park, we are now in another part of downtown Los Angeles where protesters are still on the march. This is a live picture that you're looking at from KCAL. And Mike, this is a different area. You know, I know you pointed out before, those were those towers, the abandoned apartment buildings, right, that had all of that graffiti on them.
Yeah, it is, and they're still on the move.
Oh, we have that press conference.
Watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our Founding Fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, you said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
All right, we were listening to a press conference from Governor Newsom there, and for the most part, he was certainly letting his feelings be known about President Trump, saying California is first, but it will not end. Democracy is under assault. The rule of law has given way to the rule of Don. He has asked people to exercise their First Amendment rights, but do it peacefully. And with that, that ends our coverage at this hour on the ICE raids in downtown Los Angeles. Thanks for watching KCAL News, and our live coverage will continue of the protests over the raids. We'll see you back here at 8 o'clock this evening. In the meantime, remember that curfew takes an effect for 1 square mile of the downtown area. In the meantime, have a good night.